It was the war. It's always the war. The war that drives us to fight. The war that fights us to protect. The war that forces us to flee. And that is what we did. Refugees from several different worlds banded together after watching their homeworlds burn under the wars that just never stopped. They had their own protectors, their own armored angels as they believed them to be, but they turned out to be demons in angels' clothing as they began to tear through the civilian populace. It didn't matter what color they were: red, blue, black, white, yellow. It did not matter to them as they tore through all of us. And that was just the humans. In truth, the war reaches far beyond what we know from it. However, what we do know is every time you try to build yourself up and build a peaceful planet, something you can actually raise your children on, some place where you can live a long life, the war always comes back. Those that are in charge begin to demand things from you. If I hear Mechanicus one more time, I was going to pick up one of those bolters and use it. But eventually, we got on what ships we could, and we left. An exodus. An exodus deep into unknown space as we reached out into the stars looking for any place we could reside. Any place where we did not have to worry about our own people destroying us. Just because. If there was one thing we feared above all at that point, all of us feared what they deem exterminatus. No quarter given, no chance of redemption, no options for even surrender, and they would just end us. And if it wasn't for other humans, Lord knows what was streaking out in the void. As the exodus continued, we reached beyond, we saw several of the space hulks floating, and we kept our distance. We knew how dangerous they were, and we were not armored. We were simple people. We simply wanted to be left the hell alone. But of course, that wouldn't happen unless we found a place out in the stars far beyond what humans and those Xenos were contemplating to fight over next. And what we found astounded us. Almost losing every single one of our ships through the storm, the strange ion blasts around fried half of the circuits as we finally got through to the other side of that horrible nebula. But the nebula stretched almost the entire way around the sector itself. The sun seemed to not only pull the nebula towards, but also seemed to reflect it away. After 7 planets, although there were 12, but the 7 most inner planets were protected, and the nebula seemed to wrap us in a cocoon that was similar to a warm blanket on a cold day. And we knew when we landed on that 3rd planet that we had finally found a place where we could reside. Our numbers were not many. Our numbers only stretched about 48,000. That was all. Not much, but enough to start again. And what we found out as we kept going amazed us. We found that these planets, something about this sector was unique amongst the stars, and we realized that there was something we could become beyond what we were. It took many years of reaching out to each of the planets, setting up different cultures and societies in their own planets so they could create their own worlds by themselves, coming together only as a council to make sure that no one was trying to impede on others. But having an own world to yourself, why would you? Why would you? Our population was growing, slowly, mind you. But we had found out that something had happened in the void, something that had changed us. The ion storm that we came through, since our vessels were not shielded at all, it had done something to us. We did not age at the same rate. In fact, we wondered if we aged at all after 200 or 300 years. We lost count, most of us. We watched our children grow, and they had children, and we all grew to be ourselves, but we never had to bury one, at least not due to age. And we were grateful for this. Every year, starting up in the spring and realizing that we were far from the war, from the orcs, from the other humans, from all sorts of horrors out in the void. At least, we thought we were. Through the ion storm, we saw something fly in and crash on the fourth planet. We didn't know what it was, but of course we sent rescue ships to find what was going on, and we asked the local government, "Do you need assistance?" They didn't respond, which made us very, very nervous. And before we knew it, the planet had been taken. It had been taken by some sort of demon race, something I had never seen before. A few of them had, and they called them the Drunkharry. These Drunkharry did look like demons, and they acted as such. They seemed to enjoy reaching out to the other planets and try to snatch ours, but we realized that we needed to defend ourselves, and the best minds we had were put to work. I helped them develop something interesting. It was a style of bolter, but it was much smaller. It could be lifted and held and used by any of our soldiers. Our new equipment was slightly better than what we had before, but we knew to defeat these demons, we needed something stronger. We prayed. We prayed that we could contain them on the fourth planet as best we could. We prayed that they would not reach out, but these Drunkharries came out at us, and they began to take over different planets. It seemed that they reveled in our misery, not trying to kill us right away, even though not in a high number, and we could definitely kill them, but it did take a lot as they moved very fast for their size. So we fought, and we prayed. And one day we believed our prayers may have been answered as another ship began to tear through the storm. The nebula had tore this ship almost asunder, and it was a hulking wreck, just like the demon's ship. It streaked down onto the third planet where I was, and we hoped it didn't hit hard enough to kill everyone inside, as we could only pray that inside was our salvation. We may have been right. Who or whatever was in it, we didn't know at the time. All we knew is that it was able to hold up the nose of the aircraft. This ship strafed in, ripping apart acre after acre of harvested crops, setting many of them alight with its fire. And we put the fires out as we ran up, and we saw the ship was mostly intact. And when we cracked it open, we received a shock. Inside were women. These women were very tall, very large, all of them with ghostly white hair, a strange mark on their face, and they all wore armor and carried weapons. Were these the Battle Sisters? Unfortunately, we could only save two. I say save two, but we actually got another one out, and she was non-responsive, in some sort of coma, as we could find almost a heartbeat, almost a pulse. So we immediately got her to our medical facilities, and we began to throw her into the tank. The tank is just a simple term for a regeneration tank, something that we had been able to develop since we had so much time to work. And to our surprise, we saw that it was instantly starting to heal her, but her body was mangled. It would take months before she was back on her feet, so we simply had our two. And when they awoke, They began to demand that we tell them how to get a hold of the Empire, and we told them you can't do that from here. Inside the nebula, nothing goes out, just like when you came in, you weren't supposed to. They told us that they were in combat with a different type of Xeno. I can't even pronounce the damn name, nor did I care. We simply told them that the Dakharis were here, and with that, they sprung to life. They told us we had to get them over and face them. We simply said, "You're not going alone." They looked at us and laughed and claimed, "What could you possibly do?" We laughed at them and said, "You'd be surprised." Less than an hour later, we were loading the shuttle. The two sisters were going in, and they were given the call signs Angels 1 and 2. Angels 1 and 2 were loaded, and were surprised at the efficiency of our own military, our own forces. Our battle armor seemed to be almost thinner than that of the regular guard. Our helmets were not nearly as bulky, yet seemed to have more protection to them. It was a full face covering. It was a full body covering. The only time they had seen this is when they worked with the Blood Angels or Blood Ravens or any of the others that were there. But now it was time for them to see what we could do. When we landed, we did not land unopposed. The Dakhari decided to come at us with some sort of weapons. I didn't know what, but it didn't matter. As soon as we got to the ground, we jumped out the back and we told the pilot to punch it and get out. We'll call you if we need you. With this, the Angels look at us with confusion. Are you seriously leaving yourselves to die? I still remember one of my subordinates chambering his weapon and looking up at her and saying, "Who said anything about dying today?" With that, we began to move forward. The Angels were with us, and with the Angels, we began to take the planet back. Sector by sector, block by block, building by building, we began to move. They moved with an elegance I did not expect from one so large and ones so beautiful, which is why we called them our angels. With their help, we were able to fight back the Dakhari, and we began to take back that planet. Within a single planetary rotation, we had more reinforcements landing, and they brought more weapons and more personnel. And the Dakhari, for the first time in many years, were afraid. They were afraid that our angels were going to take them apart because we had something with us that helped out our angels. We used the angels as the point of the spear, but the spear itself is not just its point. Our micronized bolters were able to do serious damage to the Dakhari. And if that wasn't enough, the angels, with their unrelenting fury, began to come down on them with blade and bolter alike. And it was not too long before the angels looked worried. We were already 3 planetary rotations in when they started to freak out. We asked what was wrong. "We have no more bolter ammunition. We're taking these on hand to hand now." We all looked at each other. "What do you mean you don't have more bolter ammunition?" "We have expended our ammunition." "Why didn't you just ask us for more?" They looked at us confused. That is until we called on the radio and returned their magazines fully loaded, and the assault continued. Our angels led the way across the planet, and before an entire month had passed, we had taken the entire continent, and only 2 more to go. The Dakhari seemed to fall at the hands of our angels, and if they did not fall to the angels, we made sure that these demons paid the price for facing us as well. It was not long before the angels had taught us how to take down these Dakhari, to let us know where to aim, how the Dakhari moved. And with that information, we took more of them then they took of us a lot more. Our medical staff came in constantly. Our medics were taking the wounded out, and we were replaced with fresh bodies constantly. And eventually we got to the shoreline, but the Dark Harry did not have a way to cross, and we all know what happens with a cornered animal. Before the final assault, one of the angels stated how the Emperor would love us in their guard, would immediately conscript us, and the way we were fighting demand that we become their space marines. With this, all our bloods ran cold. We wondered then if we had just allowed the angels to come here to save us or to enslave us, to conquer us. But until this battle is over, we wouldn't know.